Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Richard Dickson podcast, creatively named after myself, your host, Richard Dickson. You might realise that the setup we've got in here is slightly different today, and also, I don't really know what's going on with this chair. It really leans very far back, so if you are watching this on YouTube and you're thinking, wow, Richard's really relaxing back in that seat just now, this was not my choice. This is just the seat that I have been given today, so it's what we're going to be using. For those of you who are tuning in on Apple Podcasts, is it called? Is it Apple Podcasts? It's Spotify Podcasts? I'm not really sure. I'm just a man in front of the camera and the rest gets done for me. But you won't be able to see the hilarity of this really far-leaning seat. Now, quick warning, there might be a break in this podcast at some point because I've got my phone with me, and I've got my phone on loud because I am expecting a very important phone call, but duty calls, and I have to make sure that I'm here getting the podcast in as well. So if my phone starts ringing or you hear the odd ding or whatever it may be, it is because it's on loud in case I receive this phone call. So sorry if that's a little bit annoying for you, and sorry if it breaks up the content in any way. I just thought I would warn you guys before we get kicked off. Now, today, I can't really say there's a specific topic. I feel like this is a bit of a rant regarding the landscape of entrepreneurship in Scotland. And in my opinion, the blatantly obvious attack on business and SMEs that is happening at the hands of our currently elected government. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a political expert. I am not going to pretend that I am a statistician of this party versus that party and whose results were better and stuff like that. And I'll make, for the avoidance of all doubt, I'm going to make my political positions over the past couple of years extremely clear. First time I ever voted was in the Scottish independence referendum. I voted yes at that point. Like any, I'm saying I voted yes at that point, that doesn't mean I would change that now. What it means is that you use the information that is given to you at the time of that decision and you use it to the best of your capability and you make the decision that's right for you. That might be yes again. That might be no next time if it happens again. I'm not sure, but I'm just wanting to make it very, very clear. I voted to remain in the Brexit referendum thingy also. And over the past few years, I have voted a mixture of SNP and Greens. And once I think I voted Labour in a local election in Pollokshields. I can't quite remember. But that has been what I've done. Now, I'll also make it clear that I haven't voted in almost 2 years. I go out my way to go and spoil my vote deliberately. I just go and put an X on it and chuck it away. That's generally what I do. But I currently feel I have no political alignment with any party in the United Kingdom because I don't feel represented. I like to think that I am socially quite left-leaning in the sense that I love free healthcare. I think that we need to help more people in terms of the housing shortage. I am all for investment into drug and rehabilitation centres and things like that. So I think when it comes to social policy, I'm quite left-leaning. Fiscally, I would probably say I'm quite right-leaning. And as soon as you say that, people just automatically think like you're just some, skinhead maniac or whatever. But I think I'm probably right-leaning when it comes to fiscal policy in terms of, to put it simply, I'm not happy with the tax system in Scotland. I think it vilifies entrepreneurship and vilifies business owners quite heavily, to be totally honest. So I'm kind of in this middle ground where there is no party that really represents me. I like to be as, honest as possible all the time. So, and that, I can't even speak English. I like to be as honest as possible in my politics, in the sense that if I feel like, they do quite a few good things, but there's one thing I really disagree with, I couldn't logically actually go and vote for that party because it would just, I think it would mess me up in a way. I wouldn't feel like I was being authentic or being honest. So I'm kind of stuck just now. I've not voted for a few years. I can't say that I keep a huge pulse on politics. I don't watch the news. I don't keep up to date with the mainstream media, not in some, conspiracy way. I just don't have the time. I find it disinteresting. And if you want to find something to be scared or worried about, watch the news. I've got plenty of stuff to do in my day-to-day life that doesn't require me to watch the news. And if it's bad enough, I'm sure someone's going to phone me and tell me. So just now, by the way, I love discourse with stuff like this. For those of you who maybe take more of a keen interest in this stuff, and you have more stats and you have more information, even if it goes contrary to what I say, I would genuinely love to hear it, because I'm not going to go and look it up, right? This is an emotional argument for me, which is sometimes the worst. So if you have, stats that can refute some of the stuff that I maybe think, or that can back up things that I think as well, I would genuinely love to hear it. I'm not going to, look for an argument or anything. I would just love to see that kind of data, find stuff like that interesting, but not interesting enough to spend my own time collating it and searching up. So if you're someone who takes an interest in that stuff, that would be really appreciated. But I feel over the past couple of years, there's been a really clear dynamic shift in Scotland that's actively punishing entrepreneurs across the board, and in particular situations, especially here in Glasgow, and that's what I know the most about, I guess, because I live here, is vilifying certain types of businesses as well, especially in the high street / hospitality sectors. I mean, we just look at Glasgow just now for a second, and where I live in the general region, even though it's kind of nowhere near the park. It's the region of like Kelvin Grove and the Botanics in Glasgow. So I'm inside that parking section for, the Ringo apps and the parking meters and stuff. Thankfully, I am one of only 3 people on pretty much my whole street that has a private parking space. I've only got 1 car, so I've never actually registered my own street permit. But the parking there has been lifted until 10 p.m, right? 8 in the morning until 10 p.m. I seen a thing yesterday. There was a car park in the city centre, and it was like letting people know of a price increase. It's almost doubled, and we're constantly hearing certain people, political commentators, members of political parties, all the way through to, just figures on television and radio, speaking about, how the high street is struggling so much. And you walk down, walking down Sucky Hall Street just now in Glasgow, geez, it's one of the saddest things you'll ever see. And I know the fire impacted that area quite a lot, but what they've done with the roads, pedestrianising it so heavily and stuff. Sucky Hall Street's like one of the worst places to go in Glasgow at the moment, and it used to be amazing. Yeah, I used to love Sucky Hall Street. Dino's was there, and my mate had a restaurant there for a while and stuff. It was awesome. Now it's just absolutely rancid. It's totally terrible, if I'm being honest. Now you look at places like that, Sucky Hall Street. For those of you who aren't in Glasgow, maybe you'll be able to compare this to main streets in your city centre as well. Argyle Street, struggling. I walked through the St Enoch Centre for the first time in a real long time a couple of days ago, and I remember the St Enoch Centre being filled with, well-known established businesses. It's reminding me of the bloody Forge just now, right? Like, it's like Paddy's Market. Just all these weird independent shops selling really low quality goods, which, by the way, there is a place for that everywhere, because low quality generally means affordable. Not everyone wants to buy super high quality expensive stuff. That's not me taking a jab at the stuff that they're selling. You make a living selling anything, and I respect you for doing that. The point I'm making is just the change in the demographic of that shopping centre, which used to be like all singing, all dancing, so much money spent on it, refurbishing it and stuff, and now it's clearly taking a nosedive. Now, between rates that you have to pay in the city centre, business rates, rents, electricity bills, all this stuff, if you're a physical location in there, like, people are always saying, how do we get more people into the high street, and how do we do this? It's not by making bus lanes, it's not by cycle infrastructure. And by the way, I would like to say I'm pretty well versed on this, because my mum now is one of the kind of key people in terms of active travel infrastructure in Scotland, so deals with the funding of psychopaths and whatnot around the whole country. So I have an understanding of how that process works and what it looks like. the only way to bring life back to the city centre is to increase parking capacity and decrease the costs of doing so. I would even go as far as to say on Saturdays and Sundays to make parking free. Totally free, or chargeable at a very small period of time. I remember just a short handful of years ago, the cost of parking in the city centre was very insignificant. Then what they chose to do was Sundays were free, and then they chose to make Sundays maybe 10 until 2 or something you had to pay for, and then they made it Sunday all day up until 6 p.m. Then they made it you could only park in the city centre for 2 hours at a time. By the time you get into the city centre, you park your car, you go and do a little bit of shopping for Christmas or birthdays or just for yourself. You grab a bite to eat and get back to your car. That's over 2 hours. People used to, I remember you'd go to the town for like a day out. You know, you'd get in your car, you'd go to town for a wee day out, and you'd go about, you'd look in all the different shops, and you'd go for something to eat, and then you'd head home. Like, that was just, it was like quite a regular activity. And they brought in this, you can only park for 2 hours. Then you have to theoretically get in your car, move to another parking zone, and then repay for your parking at exorbitant prices, 12, 13 quid sometimes, for 2 hours of parking. If you want to park twice the city, you're paying almost £30 for a normal person. That's absolutely crazy. It's nuts. And there's all these people with degrees falling out their ears, sitting around a table, claiming whatever expenses they need to claim, discussing, how do we revitalise the city centre? Do we, let's increase the flow of buses going into the city centre. Why? For who? Teenagers and OAPs. Like, the people who are going into the city centre and, like, spending money and, you know, they are the life of the city centre is not, you know, the general demographic of the average bus user that I see in the city centre is really young people or a bit older people, right? And it's much easier for people to just jump in a car to go to the city centre and do what they want and grab things and buy more because they can stick it in the car and drive it up the road, right? So these balloons are sitting around the table. I can't remember what it is politicians get paid. What is it, 70, 80k a year? Or if they're members of the council liaising with these politicians, they're getting paid to sit around the table and go, what should we do? Okay, yeah, let's increase the flow of buses, which are all late and never on time and absolutely crap. Okay, we'll do more buses. And why don't we take away some lanes for cars and introduce more cycle lanes, right? We live in Scotland. Cycling is not a year-round endeavour for the average person. Cycling is something that many people do in fair weather or in summer, or they do it out of necessity. You know, I've just started this new job, I'm just out of uni, it's only a 15-minute cycle, can't quite afford a car just yet because I'm spending money on my rent and I'm paying down my student loans and I don't need a car just now. They're doing it out of necessity, right? Most people who cycle, and people who cycle for pleasure, aren't cycling into Glasgow city centre. Like, they're just not doing it, right? Nobody goes, people that go and cycle for pleasure the weekends, let's cycle to Loch Winnoch, let's cycle to Balloch, let's cycle to Falkirk. That's what people are doing. Nobody's going, let's cycle into the drug-infested dregs of the bottom of Argyle Street to be paraded around these crap shops and failing businesses because our councils and governments are so bloody restrictive, right? So people are scratching their heads, right? And by the way, I'm going to say it plainly. This to me is so obvious, and I might be wrong, but this to me is so obvious and is echoed by people that I respect their opinion more than mine. Someone that I don't know from Adam, have never met him in my life, but I think he's a great commentator on this stuff, is Michael Belson. He owns Bucks Bar and a bunch of other things. I'm not 100% clued up on his business portfolio, but what I love is the guy's attitude online. He's done a podcast with my friend Cole recently that I listened to and thought was excellent, and I actually wish, I doubt Michael will see this because this is probably the most unwatched podcast in Scottish history. I actually wish he spoke less. This is selfish. I wish he spoke less about you know, his journey and going to America and the Nashville chicken recipe and all that. I wish he just spoke on the government and legislation and stuff the whole time, because that's what I'm interested in. It's nice to know more about people and stuff like that as well, but I was just like, oh, I wish I just got more of that. I wish I got more of that. Now, this guy owns hospitality businesses and bars and has managed bars and stuff all across Glasgow in the city centre. And this guy posts so much sense on LinkedIn every day that I just echo for sure. Because people sit and think to themselves, okay, should we bring in more buses, more cycle lanes, bloody, I don't know, young Scot cards, OAP bus passes that everybody gets. Even the price of the subway is going up, it's increasing. The price of trains is just abhorrent just now. Absolutely abhorrent. And if you're someone commuting from Glasgow to Edinburgh, whatever, like, oh my goodness, like, the prices are crazy. And I know they've done this whole, oh, there's no off-peak or on-peak anymore. It doesn't, yeah, but you spend years hiking the prices anyway, so it's still terrible. It's so blatantly obvious to me that to help fix the high street, you need to allow more people to have free will of travel into the city centre and not be penalised for going and spending their hard-earned, heavily taxed money in that city centre. And also, by the way, this is not a vilification of the people you need to use these spots, but on Mitchell Lane, beside Sugo, on Queen Street, beside the Primark and Tam Shepherd's Joke Shop and all these places, I remember when those were all just normal parking spaces. I would say that of the parking spaces that have been taken away due to new infrastructure, bus lanes and all that, there was probably 50 or 60% of the total number of parking spaces remained. Now, I think 50% of them have been changed to disabled parking spaces, which may have been done due to a study that showed that it was something that we really needed. I don't know, I have no data for that. But I feel like the average driver who wants to come into the city centre and do a bit of shopping or grab a bit of food, everything is being done to restrict them. It's very simple to me. If you think shop, lack of customers. Why is there a lack of customers? Well, they have to pay really expensive parking. The ULEZ, I'm going to get onto that in a second. ULEZ compliance. Maybe the vehicle isn't ULEZ compliant. Okay. They can only park for 2 hours at a time, so they don't get around the shops in the time that they want to. All right. There's just all these different kind of reasons. So it's purely logic to me to sit back and go, okay, well, we want more people to go into that shop. How do we do it? More buses? No. How do we do it? More cycle lanes? No. How do we do it? The Glasgow city bike scheme? No. Well, why don't we try discounted parking on Saturdays and Sundays, and they can park for as long as they want, as long as they pay for it? Because that worked before. Paying £2 an hour or whatever it may be, right? Parking for 5-6 hours, 10 quid, 12 quid. That to me is totally reasonable, right? Do you make the parking free? Now, I know what people say, if the parking's made free, we need to make up the money elsewhere. I think we're getting robbed blind 24/7 anyway. That's my opinion, right? I think this is such a blatantly obvious problem to solve that I can't help but feel there's some other agenda here. Getting rid of combustion vehicles completely, because guess what? Scotland, although it produces such a ridiculously low, like sub 1% contribution for the emissions of Britain or Europe, I can't remember the stats. Read a book called Not Zero. It's basically ripping net zero. I am by no means a total climate change denier, but I also believe in the realms of reasonability. And Scotland is not at all responsible for carrying the brunt of other countries' lack of care for emissions. And at the end of the day, all net zero is designed to do, in my opinion, is impoverish common people, and it still won't make a difference because of mega industrialist countries like China and India. All it's going to do is impoverish the working person. That's it. Doesn't affect, like, for example, I said this before and I got a lot of backlash for it, and I'm not saying it as like you should be doing something different because of this thing. I'm saying it because when you think about it, it actually makes sense in terms of a greater agenda. The cost of living crisis is an affordability issue for many people. Like, my electricity and gas bills have went up about 2x over the past couple of years. Do I like it? No. Is it causing me an issue? Also no. So, again, that is proving my point. It is going to impoverish people with in average income households or low income households. That's exactly what it's going to do. So for me, looking at the overall situation, I feel like it's very easy to solve this, or it's very easy to try some different things in an attempt to solve this. That's my opinion, and I feel like you almost can't disagree with it. I feel like you can't. Someone will find a way to say that me saying this makes me some horrible whatever, Tory, even though I've never voted. Because I get called that all the time. People are like, oh, you're a Tory this, you're a Tory that. What, because I've made some money, had a couple of nice cars? No, my voting would show you different, right? Like, it's just the stupidest thing ever. It just goes to show how emotionally charged the tolerant left are. Tolerant left, eh? It's nuts. So, I should say the tolerant hyper left, because I know plenty left presenting left-leaning people that are totally fine, but the people who are these super tolerant, amazing, hyper left-wing people are like borderline bloody terrorists with some of the stuff they say and how they act. Is absolutely ridiculous. Some of the most embarrassing stuff you'll ever see in your life. So, moving on from that issue just for a second and just touching on the ULEZ, because I mentioned that a second ago. Like, this was when I realised the ULEZ was so unbelievably ridiculous, right? The ULEZ was coming into play, and at that point, I had 3 cars. And my dad had a pickup truck and a van. He still has. And my dad done a lot of different subcontracting work. He's an electrician. My dad done a lot of different subcontracting work in the city centre in Glasgow. And it made up maybe 20% of his income. Now, my dad was saying to me, oh, are all your cars ULEZ compliant? So I said, oh, I haven't actually checked. So I'll go and check. So I've went on and I put in my X3M competition. So I'm going to give you some stats on these cars for a second, right? 3 litre, 515 brake horsepower, twin turbo, flat 6. Very, very fast SUV, petrol powered, loud, aggressive car, high idle, no soft limiter, bad MPG, right? Put it in. ULEZ compliant. Oh, okay. I'm going to do this in terms of engine size. Next one. 3.8 litre, twin turbo, V8, 570 brake horsepower, 650 Newton meters of torque, McLaren supercar. Not a good MPG, very loud, ULEZ compliant. Oh, McLaren. And then this last one, I was thinking, there's no way. There's no way. Especially because you can make the argument, okay, X3M's only 3 years old or something like that at the time. So, modern technology, fine. The McLaren was like 5 years old. Modern technology, fine. But then I had like a 10-year-old, but slightly more than that, Rolls Royce. It was an amazing car. I absolutely loved it. And that the Ghost hadn't changed for like the last 14, 15 years. So, the spec was great. And I got it in a swap anyway. So, it was just one of those cars you end up with and had great fun with. 6.75 litre twin turbo V12, averaging 9 miles to the gallon. ULEZ compliant. Now, why did I say this? Richards are telling us of the ULEZ compliance of your cars. It's not that interesting. My dad's 1.5 DCI diesel Vauxhall Vivaro 2017 or something, non-ULEZ compliant, working man's vehicle. And the funny thing is, I think my dad has like a 17 plate. The 67 of that vehicle had one software change that means that that's ULEZ compliant. So my dad then loses 20% of his income because of this ULEZ stuff. Because Scotland has made illegal, they're legally bound to net zero by 2050 or whatever it is, 2030, 2050, I can't remember what it is, I think it's 2050. They're legally bound to it. We have made a legally binding agreement to hit net zero, which is going to cost the taxpayer trillions of pounds. It is not going to change the world. It is going to make the average person lose out on money, lose out on income, and it is a zero-sum game for every single person involved, minus the idiot politicians who will be fucking dead anyway, right? It is a zero-sum game. But they got to put their name on it and get some type of stupid award or a pat on the back, whilst they all milk the average people to pay into this net zero crap for which we are not responsible because we produce such a small amount of the emissions. But it's worth it for this virtue signalling, hyper climate activist shite. I'm going to say it plainly, shite, crap, to have the people of Scotland carry that burden for the government's virtue signalling shite. How is that fair? It's not fair, right? My dad's a working man. He can't get in the town his pickup or his truck or his van. And do you know what the funny thing is about that stupid ULEZ website for any of you that have ULEZ non-compliant vehicles? Anyone remember the scrap car buyback scheme? You got £1,000 for every scrap car. Didn't matter if it had no wheels and all that. They'd done this massive buyback of scrap cars a couple of years ago. So what people were doing was, and this was the plan, it was a scrap car buyback, but people would get a car that was 500 quid. That was still running, MOT, everything, whatever, and go and chuck it for £1,000, 500 quid profit, right? Who wouldn't do that? It's smart. But this was to take certain types of petrol vehicles off the road, to have less super affordable vehicles, to get more people out of combustion cars, right? And more dependent on travel infrastructure from the Scottish Government. Oh, and then we started getting hiked train prices and bad bus services and replacing train services with buses, right? Kind of a bit sus, but we'll say that's down to just coincidence. And now, when you go on this ULEZ non-compliance thing, you put in your car and it says, oh, your car's not ULEZ compliant. There's a link there, a little option that's like, do you want us to buy your car off you? They are trying to strip out as many combustion vehicles as possible. Oh, your car isn't ULEZ compliant, no problem, come to us, we'll give you some crap insignificant money for it, and then you can go and have to take on debt to finance a new ULEZ compliant vehicle. How can people look at this and not see it adding up? Are you ignorant? Are you stupid? Are you so attached to what you've stood for the past few years that if the government paraded a donkey with a yellow rosette, you would vote for it? Like, what's going on here? It actually makes me sad. It makes me sad thinking about this, right? See where I grew up and getting the chance that my dad never had amazing cars, right? But getting the chance to jump in the car and go to town and stuff like that, that was amazing. Like, cut around St Enoch Centre, even if you don't buy anything, you go for a walk about, you look at stuff, go to the Mitchell Library, like, whatever it is, you know, walk around. We used to walk around Park Circus with my mum. She would take us there. And to think that there's other families that are in low-income households now that can't even have that privilege because the government is so restrictive. You want to fix the high street, make the high street accessible for everyone. I'm not saying make it free. Make parking £2 an hour, £3 an hour, whatever, right? Make it cheaper. Give us more parking spaces. Don't restrict us to 2 hours of parking. Don't make the parking until 10 p.m. And I feel like I'm getting so frustrated here that I'm just going to go into an emotional kind of level here and lose my head slightly, which I don't want to do, right? And I'll maybe talk about this on another episode. But see the tax situation for entrepreneurs. I get reached out to by news publications. I've done probably somewhere in the region of 25 different news or TV interviews in the last 7 months, ranging from small scale publications and small local magazines all the way through to being on Sky Sports and different things like that. Now, I got reached out to by a columnist at one of the major newspapers in the UK. Oh, the new budget's been announced, or the tax system in Scotland has changed, or this has been done, or that has been done. And they do these feasibility studies of basically they take your income, they take some of your expenses, and then they calculate it with the new tax bands and say, hey, you're 50 quid better off, you're £3,000 worse off, you're this, that, the next thing. I've been getting asked this for over a year with all these different little changes and policy changes. Every time it's just worse off, worse off, worse off. Now, the good thing is I have the benefit of being able to take dividends as a company owner, right? And it's more tax efficient than being an employee, which is awesome. But I look at some of my employees in here, like some of my sales team, for example, who will be on track in terms of the on-track earnings to do high 5 figures, breaking 6 figures inside of the next 12 months. And that's so exciting for me because I remember what it was like making 10k a month at the start of my kind of business career, and the excitement that gave me. It just made me feel amazing and so valuable, right? It's so valuable. And I had to look and go, wow, you're going to see about 60 grand of that. If you make 100k, you're going to see about 60 grand of that. That's ruthless. And I would never have them as contractors because they lose so many benefits that they get from us, like in terms of what we have as a company. They lose so many benefits and pension contributions, and I guess it also opens us up to some risk as well because they're then contractors, don't need to work notice periods, they can just leave and stuff like that. So it's just not feasible for that to happen. And I think just now, in terms of the dividend tax for entrepreneurs and just the different financial hurdles that are facing business owners in Scotland, I think, here's my opinion, I'll say it plainly, I think the SNP are vilifying businesses. Every business owner I feel is vilified. Oh, the big hungry business owner with all that money. And I get that people shake their fists at me, right? And over the past couple of years, I've been a bit of an arsehole online, right? And I'm sure if you go on my profile now, you'll see that it's very different. Do I regret doing any of that? Absolutely not. That was how I felt at the time, and I liked winding people up and all that, but go and look at my content, it's very, very different. But I understand how, 25, 26 years old, Rolls Royce, McLaren, whatever. Oh yeah, guy with money, bastard, arsehole, no. I get it, fine, adds up, totally cool. I work B2B, right? So most of what we do is business to business, minus the Yes Academy, which is fully autonomous, so I don't actually see or speak to that many people one-to-one in there. But in terms of B2B stuff, it's like mum and dad businesses. 50, 60k a year turnover. Still got expense going off that. These people are running businesses for like 28, 29, 30 grand a year. Smashing their pans in. And you guys go, oh, you have it. As soon as someone says, oh, yeah, I've got a business, automatically jump to, oh, making hundreds of thousands every year, property portfolio. Oh, I'm sure you're a landlord. Disgusting thing, landlords. You absolute balloons, honestly. When the stupidest thing they done for trying to help the housing crisis was that eviction freeze and the rent freeze. It was one of the, and that's another topic to talk on again, it was one of the stupidest things they ever done. I cannot believe, was it Patrick Harvey or whoever done it? I cannot believe that even was a thing. I can't believe it. Like, I'm actually lying here back in my highly reclinable office chair, and I'm like, who came up with that logic? And do you know what the funny thing is? These career politicians, they know nothing of the real world. They know nothing of working hard. They know nothing of giving anything any effort. They go to nursery. They go to primary school. They go to secondary school. They go to university and study politics or some type of degree, or whilst they're doing their degree, they're involved politically outside in their free time and campaigning and canvassing for a political party. Then they go into, local politics, council positions. Then they go into, all the way through this process to get to being, an MSP, like a member of parliament and stuff like that. They've never had a real job. I'm not going to say being a politician's a real job because it's not. It's not a real job. It seems like a pastime 99% of the time. I'm sure I'm wrong, right? That's an emotional response. Maybe I'm probably wrong. But you don't know what it's like to be a common person. You don't know what it's like to be a victim of your own legislation, right? And your own political decisions. You're a career politician, which, by the way, is like being in school forever. Because what do you do in primary school? Oh, you argue and you gossip with your friends and, playground drama. Then you go into secondary school and it's very much the same. Then you go into university and again, you've never left school. If you're a career politician at 50 years old, you've never left school. You're still a cliping little playground bitch 99% of the time. And these idiots, we have a cheek to look over to America and think, oh, Joe Biden, this old guy, can hardly string a sentence together and laugh. Wow. It says, it was said by the Lord Jesus, I will paraphrase this, that, you're worrying about the speck in someone else's eye when you're not attending to the potentially much larger speck within your own. And we're so busy to look at other countries and laugh and go, wow, injustice, and that's terrible for those people. Just so comfortably numb here. It's like golden handcuffs. We're in a nice enough country with nice enough things and enough TV on and enough TikTok and enough takeaway options that it's just, oh yeah, we'll just sit, you're raising that up a little bit, fine. And here's the thing, British people are never going to stand up like how the French do and how the Germans do and how the Dutch do. It's never going to happen. Farmers protesting in the street, making blockades, it's never going to happen. And that's why I'm so motivated to leave Scotland. There's nothing here for me. There's, minus my business and my clients that I love, which I will always, if I move to Spain, I'll fly back in once a month for a week to service my clients and do my events and do my coaching and maintain my meetings. I will 100% do that. But I don't want to live here. I don't want to be a resident here anymore. And what's so funny, the most viral video I ever made online, it got over 2 million views, 300,000 or so likes, all these different comments. My most popular video was me saying how proud I was to be Scottish and how amazing it was to be a Scottish man and how it was the thing that makes me the happiest in the world. Because, by the way, I don't identify as a British man. I can understand logically and legally that that's what my passport says. I'm a citizen of Great Britain, right? We are a union. Fine. But I'm Scottish. I'm Richard from Glasgow. I'm a Scottish man. If you ask me, where are you from? I'm Scottish. I love being Scottish. What an amazing country. Inventions and all the different things that we've done. St Mirren Football Club. It's amazing. And for the first time in my life, I'm happy to give that up. It's not ever something that crossed my mind. Because there's nothing here for me. And many of us watching this right now, there's nothing here for us. We are vilified for attempting to do something that's out with the norm. And people act like governments and councils have our best interests at heart. I think it's pretty clear to see that that's not the case. I feel like I've not even spoken about half the stuff I want to speak about today and spoke about other stuff instead. ULEZ, parking, high street dying, taxation. There's too many coincidences happening for me to think that this isn't some type of agenda. It's not a conspiracy theory. That's not, ooh, the mate Twix is attacking us. That's not me. I'm not stupid, right? So there's one thing I hate. Call me whatever you want. You can say I'm annoying, you can say I'm this. I'm not stupid, right? I'm not stupid. But I think there is an agenda here to kill business, to create numb, weak people. Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs, guys. It's a really sad state of affairs. Yeah, like I said, if you have some different opinions or some things I might find interesting, please feel free to, let me know in the comments. I would love to see some of that stuff or any stats that goes for or against what I'm saying. I've not even touched on things like crime and I could sit and talk here all day, I think, even though I don't think I'm informed or educated enough to. I feel like I still could. If you're an entrepreneur, Scotland's a hard landscape to make it work. Well, being an entrepreneur anywhere is hard. Doesn't matter where you are. You could be in a zero tax country, it's still difficult. the percentages would say that you're still more likely to fail than to succeed. But Scotland is particularly hard. Everything is so expensive. Expenses are just going up and up to operate a business and just to exist. My goodness. Have mercy on us, Lord. That's what I say. Have mercy on us. Guys, thank you for watching this podcast. I'm sure a lot of you will, or listening also, I'm sure a lot of you will have agreed with some of the stuff I'm saying. And yeah, if you did, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, I'd also love to know, because it's something I would like to know and discuss more of. Maybe I'll try and bring on a guest to discuss stuff like this. That would be really, really good. But I've not been able to get any guests yet. Not because I'm asking people and they're dinging me and saying no, by the way. Just because I haven't really tried that hard. It's honestly laziness. Thank you for watching. I'll catch up with you next time. Peace.